Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere that sounds dreamy until you actually smell it. You're arriving outside the home of a moderately wealthy Roman citizen. Let's call him Gaius, somewhere in the beating heart of first century Rome. It's dinner party night. You're invited. Sort of. You'll be observing, lounging invisibly at the edge of the action like some ghostly time-traveling wallflower. Right now, though, you're not feeling ghostly. You're dodging donkey droppings and human waste. Public sanitation isn't exactly Rome's greatest achievement. The stone streets beneath your sandals are slick with who knows what. A cart just trundled by, loaded with amphorae of olive oil, sloshing as it hits a pothole and leaves an oily sheen on the stone. The smell? Earthy, slightly metallic, and oddly nutty. Olive oil, when warmed under the Mediterranean sun and mingled with the day's refuse, has a surprisingly persistent funk. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far we travel together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle past a sleeping beggar and pause outside the domus of your host. A porter eyes you up and down, but gestures you inside. The air shifts as soon as you pass beneath the lintel. From briny alleys to scented luxury, it's like jumping into another world. Only you still smell faintly of street sweat and roasted chestnuts from that vendor you passed an hour ago. Inside, the atrium echoes with distant chatter and the drip-drip of the impluvium's water. The household's incense, probably a blend of frankincense and myrtle, tries heroically to overpower the rest of the sensory cocktail. You notice it right away. Under the exotic perfume, there's something fishy, not metaphorically. It's actual fish, or more precisely, garum, that infamous fermented fish sauce every Roman with taste buds and a death wish swears by. The combination is strange, religious, almost temple-like from the incense, but then boom, garum stings your nostrils with its vinegary punch. It's the aroma equivalent of someone praying while frying sardines. Historians still argue whether Roman cities actually smelled bad to their inhabitants, or whether modern noses are just more sensitive. One school of thought says they were nose blind to it all. Another suggests that citizens used overpowering perfumes precisely because they noticed every whiff. As you stand by the atrium's pool, a young slave sprinkles crushed laurel leaves across the floor to freshen the air. It helps, but not much. At least it masks the underlying note of mildew. The walls of this house are old, and Roman plumbing, while advanced for its time, doesn't stop mold from creeping in. Then there's the ever-present scent of olive wood smoke from the kitchen fires, bitter, dry, slightly sweet. It wraps around you like a scratchy woolen blanket and clings to your tunic. Even now, you wonder how long it'll take to get that out of your clothes. Spoiler, a while. Romans didn't exactly have Tide Pods. And here's a quirky tidbit. Many Romans believed that pleasant smells could ward off disease. So your host, ever the hypochondriac, has not one but two incense burners at the entryway. Whether that does anything beyond making you sneeze is debatable. But for now, your olfactory journey is only beginning. You haven't even made it past the vestibule, and already your nose has been assaulted by garum, laurel, olive smoke, and something suspiciously like overripe figs left out too long. And this is just the pre-party scentscape. You step deeper into the house, into the vestibule proper, where the host's attempt at olfactory ambiance becomes even more ambitious and confusing. This small passageway, meant to impress guests as they enter, doubles as a battleground where fish sauce, floral oils, and aged leather duke it out in the air like gladiators with perfume vials instead of swords. You pause beneath a fresco of Hercules, wrestling some unfortunately wide-eyed beast. The wall art is vivid, but your attention is pulled elsewhere, by the smell. It hits you like a soft slap. Incense, yes, but now mingled with stale garum from the previous night's dinner, wafting faintly from the cracks in the floor tiles. Someone didn't mop properly. The combination is less welcome to our home, and more welcome to a memory of mackerel. Historians still argue whether Roman vestibules were intentionally scented spaces or just carried residual household smells from the day's bustle. What's not up for debate is this. Garum didn't just stay in the kitchen, it lingered in fabric, in grout, in the very soul of a home, apparently. To cover it, your host has gone full sensory overdrive. You spot a tiny censer hanging by the door, swinging gently. It's filled with crushed myrrh, releasing soft curls of smoke that smell earthy and slightly medicinal. It's the same scent Roman priests used in rituals. You breathe it in and suddenly feel like something sacrificial is about to happen, possibly to your sinuses. Nearby, a small bowl of petals sits beneath a niche, filled with wilting roses, lavender sprigs, and something that looks suspiciously like wilted cabbage. Whether this is decoration or an ancient form of potpourri is unclear, but the cabbage note is definitely winning. The water is murky, and you consider backing away. But a curious little dog trots past your feet, sniffing at the same bowl like it knows secrets. The floor beneath you is mosaic. Tiny black and white tiles arranged in a witty phrase or phallic pun, very on brand for Rome. It's been washed, you think, recently. The scent of vinegar lingers on the stone, a clean but sharp smell that mixes poorly with the floral mold bouquet above. From the atrium, more guests begin to arrive. One man walks in wearing a tunic embroidered with what might be hunting dogs or disgruntled wolves. As he moves, you catch a wave of unguentum, a homemade perfume mixture, likely rose or violet oil suspended in goose fat. That's not a joke. Romans used animal fat as a base for scent. It gives the perfume longevity and an unfortunate undertone of yesterday's stew. Quirky fact for the night. Upper-class Romans often assigned servants just to perfume them throughout the day. One slave would carry a flask of scent and dab it on the master's neck or wrists at intervals, like a human cologne spritzer with feelings. If you think that's excessive, remember that they also had slaves to brush cobwebs off ceilings. Someone drops a small wax tablet by the doorway. As it clatters, a gust of air flows in from the street again, bringing with it the bracing scent of the outside, dust, dung, and a hint of fried chickpeas. It's strangely welcome. The vestibule is a sensory paradox, too much and not enough all at once. You pass by a small statuette of the household gods, the Lares, perched in their little shrine niche, half bathed in candlelight. Incense is offered here too. Another scent, something clove adjacent, flickers in the flame's warmth. It's almost soothing. Almost. But just as you're about to get used to this layered aroma cocktail, someone brushes past you carrying what appears to be a tray of warm bread. And just like that, your attention shifts. The smell is glorious, yeasty, golden, soft. It's the first truly inviting scent of the evening. Your stomach growls. Unfortunately, it only lasts a moment before another guest walks in, wearing what you're certain is eau de goat stables. Not vintage, just literal. The dog circles your feet again. You're both hoping the bread makes a return soon. As you move farther into the house, your senses begin to adjust, though not necessarily in a good way. The floor beneath your sandals gives a soft squeak, recently scrubbed. A young slave crouches at the far end of the corridor, aggressively brushing at the mosaic tiles with a stiff reed broom. You watch as he dunks the broom into a bucket that emits a vinegar-heavy tang with an unsettling hint of fish? Again, with the garum. It turns out Roman floor cleaning wasn't all lemon zest and herbal extracts. The go-to combo was water, cheap vinegar, and sometimes ash or sand for scrubbing. Great for grime, not great for fragrance. What's worse is that it doesn't completely erase what's been spilled before. So even as the floor sparkles, the air still remembers yesterday's meal, or three. As guests continue to arrive, the scent cloud becomes richer and more layered, like a soup that's been simmering too long. Most of the newcomers have walked from the public thermi, the massive communal bathhouses. Sounds refreshing, but don't get your hopes up. The scent they bring isn't quite eucalyptus and lavender steam. While it's true that many Romans were fastidious bathers, their version of clean was a bit different. Soap as we know it didn't exist. Instead, bathers slathered their skin with oil, then scraped it off with a curved metal tool called a strigil. Effective? Sure. Fragrant? That depends entirely on the oil. Some preferred pine or almond. Others, let's say the less socially aware, just used straight-up olive oil. You're now surrounded by a dozen sweaty people, all exuding a subtle blend of body warmth, sour vinegar, olive residue, and civic pride. One man you pass nods to you politely. He smells like garlic and ambition. You nod back, trying not to breathe through your nose. The room begins to hum with conversation and motion. Slaves dart about, lighting oil lamps that release tiny threads of soot and the mild, nutty scent of burnt sesame. One of the lamps sputters, and suddenly there's a sharp pop and a dark mark on the wall. No one reacts. Probably happens all the time. You step to the side as another slave hurries past with a bowl of something that smells unmistakably like pickled turnip. Why turnip? Why now? You're not even seated yet. But this is all part of the warm-up act, the pre-dinner chaos before the actual meal. You glance down and notice something most guests likely try to ignore. The floor is slightly sticky. That's because Roman banquets didn't involve forks, and scraps often ended up wherever they were flung. Most houses had a crew of slaves dedicated solely to crumb patrol. Tonight, they're working overtime. One girl walks by holding a small bundle of herbs, rosemary, sage, maybe thyme, tied with a string. She dabs it along the door frames and windowsills. Whether it's for insects or to bless the space isn't clear, but the sharp herbal tang cuts through the other smells like a nose whistle from the gods. Fun fact, some Roman households kept pet monkeys. Why is that relevant? Because one just scampered across the rafters overhead, trailing a whiff of unwashed fur and stolen fig paste. No one reacts to this either. Apparently, it's just another Wednesday. Historians still debate how much Roman homes relied on air care strategies versus simply accepting the smells of life. Some say wealthier families invested in imported incense and perfumes. Others suggest even the rich were nose-deep in the same daily funk as everyone else. Just with fancier wall paintings, you finally find your spot near the triclinium entrance. A slave gestures for you to remove your sandals. As you do, your feet touch the cool tile, and you instantly wish you'd kept them on. The floor is damp in places, and a faint whiff of mildew wafts up. Ancient Rome may have had indoor plumbing, but that didn't make the water any less likely to find new and unwanted places to settle. Someone nearby laughs, too loudly, and sloshes a drink onto the floor. The dog from earlier returns to investigate, licking the puddle enthusiastically. You're not sure if that makes you more or less thirsty. You catch the scent of lemon peel, maybe from a nearby table. It's one of the only bright notes in the entire olfactory orchestra. It dances briefly in your nostrils before being crushed by a passing wave of pickled onions. And just when you think your nose has finally hit peak fatigue, someone drops a clay plate nearby, and the resulting crash releases a puff of steam and the unmistakable, brain-searing reek of boiled cabbage. You close your eyes and take a deep breath, already regretting it. You finally enter the triclinium, the formal dining room, and you're greeted by a scene that is part luxury, part chaos, and part sensory overload. The room is dim, lit mainly by flickering oil lamps mounted in bronze wall sconces. Shadows dance along painted murals. Venus reclining, Bacchus drunk, and a rather enthusiastic centaur doing something probably not PG-13. But it's not the art that grabs your attention. It's the air. It smells complicated. The host, our friend Gaius, is already lounging on one of the 3 dining couches, reclining on his left side like a lizard that just inherited land. His skin glistens slightly. Whether from oil or sweat is anyone's guess. He radiates confidence and the heavy scent of rose oil. The stuff is strong enough that it punches through the fog of vinegar and smoke like a gladiator swinging a floral mace. Roman men wore perfume like armor. It was a status symbol. And Gaius is clearly trying to impress someone, possibly everyone. The rose scent is almost pleasant, until you get a little closer and realize he's applied it with all the subtlety of a toddler with jam. It's not so much scented as marinated. And then there are the guests. Some are freshly scrubbed and oiled, sure, but others, well, let's just say the bathing queue at the Thermae must have been long today. One woman walks past you, her perfume smelling faintly of lilac with a spicy undertone you can't place. Moments later, it hits you. She's layered it over strong garlic breath. That's not perfume. It's strategy. The guy reclining beside her has clearly made no such effort. He smells of day-old tunic, dried sweat, and what might be horse. You're not sure if it's from riding one or eating near one, but the result is assertive. Historians still argue whether Romans noticed or cared about body odor the way we do today. There's evidence they mocked those who didn't bathe or wear perfume, but also plenty of jokes about how even the cleanest citizens could be, well, aromatic. Let's just say deodorant wasn't exactly standard issue. Slaves moved between the couches, placing small bronze basins of cool water near each guest. You dip your fingers in one, and it smells faintly of lemon and herbs, probably to refresh your hands before eating. You notice, however, that the basin hasn't been emptied since the last round. Bits of herb float in it like pond scum. You quietly wipe your fingers on your tunic instead. One curious tradition. The wealthiest Romans sometimes paid lesser perfumed guests to sit farther away. Seating hierarchy wasn't just about social class. It was about smell distribution. The host, of course, always got the best spot, both for viewing and breathing. You settle onto your assigned couch, covered in cushions that look soft, but smell vaguely like goat. Not fresh goat, not tragic goat, just goat that's seen some things. The cushions, stuffed with straw or wool, have absorbed years of dinners, perfumes, and accidents. You try not to lean too deep into them. Across the room, a guest sneezes violently. A slave rushes to offer him a cloth, which he waves away. Instead, he blows his nose into his toga and continues talking about Cicero's oratory skills. The scent of musty fabric and recent illness wafts your way like an uninvited guest. And then, as if summoned by your discomfort, someone begins burning resinous incense in a shallow dish near the entrance. It's a deep, smoky smell, probably olibanum or storax, meant to purify the air. Ironically, it just locks all the smells in place like a big invisible lid. Congratulations. You're now sealed in a room with garlic breath, goat cushions, aggressive floral oils, and one man who may be fermenting. A light joke circles the room. Something about Cicero's breath being so bad it could cause Senate walkouts. Laughter erupts, and with every laugh, another puff of wine and garum-basted breath fills the room. You try to chuckle along while leaning discreetly away from the airflow. The dog has made its way in again. This time it's curled beneath a couch, nose twitching at all the spilled bits on the floor. No one stops it. Honestly, it's probably cleaner than half the guests. As everyone prepares for the appetizer course, the atmosphere settles into something approaching ritual. You get the sense that despite the smells, the sweat, and the sensory circus, this is sacred time, a pause in the day's madness. You are here, on a cushion that smells like historical goat, surrounded by personalities and perfumes in equal measure. You are not alone, and you are definitely not unscented. The cushions shift beneath you as you recline awkwardly, trying to balance on your left elbow like everyone else while pretending you've done this before. Your head hovers somewhere between a pewter plate and a fragrant elbow, and you suddenly appreciate how low tables make every smell, every single one, your personal guest for the evening. The gustatio, or appetizer course, is being served now. Slaves in short tunics file in, each carrying trays of small, oddly shaped dishes. You peer over to inspect your plate and find a suspiciously jiggly egg custard surrounded by sweetened cheese, some wrinkled dates, and what appears to be something pickled. Possibly a mushroom, possibly a frog, possibly both. But the aroma? It's surprisingly tolerable, maybe even enjoyable. The cheese smells creamy and tangy. The dates have a syrupy sweetness that warms your nose. And the custard, infused with honey and a bit of cumin, releases steam that actually cuts through the room's heavier notes like a helpful hand waving over a bad decision. A new smell begins to drift in, however. Not from your plate, but from the corner hearth, where the next course is being readied. The kitchen is off to the side of the house, separated by a low archway, and right now they're burning applewood chips to roast something. The smoke curls lazily into the triclinium, adding a soft, fruity tang to the air. Smoke as seasoning. You breathe it in deeply, thankful for something that doesn't remind you of fermented anchovies or sweaty linen. Historians still debate whether this use of aromatic wood in Roman cooking was intentional flavoring or simply what was on hand. Some recipes call for specific woods, while others leave it to chance, or to whatever tree was unfortunate enough to be near a cleaver. A servant passes by carrying a fresh loaf of spelt bread. The crust is brown and uneven, the smell nutty with just a hint of ash. You wonder if it was baked directly on a stone floor. Spoiler: it was. The Romans hadn't discovered non-stick anything. Another guest beside you dips a hunk of bread into olive oil infused with coriander seeds. He gestures toward the custard and grunts with approval. You're about to do the same when you catch another scent, one that doesn't belong. Feet. More specifically, sandal-worn feet. Dusty, sun-roasted, possibly slightly infected. Because of course, with everyone reclining, all the feet are now pointing toward the center of the table. And while you'd like to believe your fellow diners are freshly bathed and perfumed, the truth is glaring back at you through a waft of ancient toe. You subtly adjust your position, and that's when the couch betrays you. A waft of something musty, an old animalish smell, puffs up from the cushion beneath you. It's the upholstery, stuffed with who knows what, probably wool, possibly goat hair, maybe human despair. The couch smells like centuries of seated people. Not everyone wore clean togas or underwear. A joke is told, something about Caesar and a chicken, and everyone bursts into laughter. One man slaps his knee, sending a ripple of air your way that smells like fermented barley and onion. You blink once, then twice. Then you reach for your cup, hoping the wine will help. Ah, yes, the wine. It's served warm because cold wine is for barbarians. It's been spiced too, cinnamon, peppercorn, bay leaves. The Romans loved to doctor their wine like it was a medieval cough syrup. You sip. It tastes like someone tried to make mulled wine but forgot to strain out the forest floor. Still, it smells better than the guy on your right, so you go in for another. Quirky tidbit. Upper-class Romans sometimes hired someone just to sit and sniff them during meals, alerting them if their perfume wore off. These scent checkers were usually eunuchs, because apparently that made them more trustworthy. Let that settle into your nose. A slave bumps into a table and a small bowl of pickled eggs hits the floor. The smell that explodes upward is immediate and offensive. Sharp, briny, and vaguely sulfurous, like a sock drawer in a vinegar factory. The dog charges in to investigate, tail wagging. You pretend not to gag. You glance around the room and spot a basket of fresh herbs in the corner. Someone's trying. Bay leaves, dill, maybe some hyssop. It helps. You mentally thank whoever thought of it. But just as you feel the room finding balance, another gust from the hearth rolls in, this time laced with what smells like singed feathers. The next course is almost ready. The couch groans beneath you again as you lean forward slightly, drawn by the evolving smells from the hearth. You're beginning to understand why Roman feasts were considered sensory experiences. They weren't just about taste. They were about being immersed in a stew of odors, sounds, and textures. Tonight, the soup is particularly thick. A slave approaches with a steaming tray. You brace yourself as a bowl of roasted nuts, candied pine kernels, and seasoned chickpeas is placed before you. That sweet, salty blend of honey and herbs, probably oregano and coriander, creates a smell that's warm, almost cozy. It reminds you of modern roasted snacks, though with more ash and fewer food safety regulations. The room shifts again as more platters arrive. The prima mensa, or main course, is being staged just off the triclinium. But before that tidal wave crashes over your senses, the applewood smoke deepens. It seeps into the room like an invisible fog. The scent is sweet and resinous, like overripe fruit left on a windowsill. It clings to the soft folds of your tunic and creeps into your hair. It's not unpleasant, just clingy. A few of the wealthier guests sniff with approval, perhaps pretending to detect a vintage note in the smoke, like wine connoisseurs of air pollution. Historians still argue whether the applewood was burned for flavor or showmanship. The fact that Gaius made sure you noticed it suggests a bit of both. Romans were nothing if not performative. Smell wasn't just background, it was part of the theater. You notice that some guests dab perfume under their noses discreetly. One woman uses a small piece of wool soaked in violet oil. It's a trick borrowed from priests and apothecaries alike. Carry your own scent filter. And yet, despite the effort, the room fights back. A guest at the far couch stands abruptly and excuses himself. The space he vacates is immediately flooded with the smell of stewed onions, cumin, and disappointment. The cushion he leaves behind seems to exhale. You try not to look, or inhale. The slaves continue setting dishes on small tables. Roasted birds, quail, maybe pigeon, with a dark glaze that glistens under the lamplight. The smell is rich, sharp, tangy. Garum again, mixed with honey and a bit of pepper. The sauce is sticky and unmistakable. Fermented anchovies never met a recipe they couldn't crash, like a bad party guest. Someone nearby remarks, a good sauce should sting the eyes. And he's not wrong. You feel a mild tear welling. From joy? From vinegar vapor? Unclear. Next comes a platter of dormice. Yes, actual mice. Stuffed with minced meat, pine nuts, and more garum, then roasted until crispy. You try not to react. The smell is oddly nutty, like a cross between roast pork and overdone popcorn. The mouse tails curl artfully around the edges like decorative garnish. A quirky Roman tradition. These dormice weren't just for taste. They were status food. The more exotic or unsettling the dish, the wealthier and more daring the host. And Gaius? He's flexing hard tonight. As the roasted aroma builds, the room heats up slightly. The brazier in the corner gives off both warmth and a whisper of burned charcoal. It blends with the scent of singed meat and perfumes into something that almost smells festive, if you squint with your nose. At this moment, a dog lets out a single, resigned sigh from beneath the table. It's the exact sound you would make if your social standing allowed you to lie flat and ignore every smell above the floorboards. You glance around. The guests seem animated now, the wine loosening tongues and postures. Someone slaps someone else on the back a little too hard. A slave trips and recovers a platter mid-fall. The room bursts into applause and laughter, and another wave of roasted meat odor. Historians often debate whether Romans appreciated subtleties in flavor the way we do. Judging by tonight's menu, subtlety is not the goal. Intensity is. Every dish smacks you in the face with something bold, sour, sweet, salty, spicy. No in-betweens, no palate cleansers, just one continuous party of punchy aromas doing battle in your head. One man across the room starts reciting poetry, something about love and olive groves. His breath unfortunately smells like both, if the olives were stored poorly and the grove was on fire. You sip more wine. It's tasting better now, or perhaps you're just numb. Just then, a guest nearby breaks into a sneeze so forceful it briefly silences the room. He apologizes, reaches for a cloth, and, oh dear, knocks over a small bowl of garum. It splashes onto the stone floor and instantly releases a stink so violent it feels like it slaps your face with a damp sandal. Everyone pretends not to notice, but one guest subtly dips his wool nose wad in fresh perfume and holds it closer to his face. You do the same with your cup. It's all you have. The wine has done its job. People are looser now, laughing louder, gesturing wider, and saying things they'll almost certainly forget come morning. But amid the cacophony of voices and clinking cups, another scent asserts itself like a pompous senator barging into a quiet room. Breath. Specifically, the collective breath of a dozen diners who've consumed cheese, pickled vegetables, salted fish sauce, and spicy honey wine in quick succession without so much as a mint leaf in between. It's a cloud of garlic, vinegar, and fermented everything, and it hovers over the table like a weather system with bad intentions. Someone says something witty in Latin, maybe a pun, maybe a philosophical jab at Epicureans, and the group roars with laughter. Mouths open, the aroma intensifies. You blink slowly. Your eyes water. No one notices. A slave makes the rounds with a tray of little clay cups filled with a strange greenish liquid. You're informed it's a palate cleanser, wine infused with mint, fennel, and a bit of laserpitium, a rare herb not unlike garlic, but worse. The Romans imported it at absurd prices until it went extinct from overharvesting. So naturally, Gaius has a stash. You sip. It's bracing, herbal, almost medicinal. But it also feels like you just drank the inside of a potted plant. Historians still argue about the precise composition of these so-called digestive aids. Some claim they were designed to stimulate belching, which was considered polite at a feast. Others think it was just about showing off rare ingredients. Either way, it doesn't help with the air quality. You notice that some guests begin to subtly dab their mouths with perfumed cloths. It's part napkin, part defense system. One man even sneaks a pinch of what looks like crushed rosemary and rubs it under his nostrils. Not because he's trying to smell it, but to not smell everything else. Desperate times, desperate herbs. A particularly talkative guest leans in close to make a point about the virtues of aging amphorae in cool cellars. His breath carries notes of mulled wine, pickled leeks, and tragic choices. You nod politely, while slowly leaning away like a reed in the wind. Then a new wave hits. The main course is arriving. Slaves glide in bearing dishes of steaming food, and suddenly everything else is drowned out. You smell honey-glazed eels, roasted duck stuffed with plums, and something you can only identify as creamy and animal. That last one turns out to be sow's udder, poached in milk and sprinkled with cinnamon. The smell? Like fatty pork pudding mixed with potpourri. A quirky Roman detail. Sow's udder was considered a delicacy, a food of emperors. Supposedly, it was meant to demonstrate that Rome could elevate even the humblest ingredients to haute cuisine. What it actually demonstrates is that you can't unsmell certain things once they've entered your soul. You try a bite. It's rich. So rich, in fact, you're immediately grateful the Romans were fans of emetics. Not that you're going to indulge, but the option is weirdly comforting. Just as your senses begin to dull into a warm, wine-laced fog, another wave of food arrives. This one heavier, hotter, and unapologetically fishy. The secunda mensa is still a ways off, but Gaius is determined to leave a mark with his main course. And he does. Through the nose. The scent hits before the platters even enter the room. Garum. Again. But this time, not a splash or drizzle. This is garum in its most weaponized form. Heated, blended with honey, vinegar, and possibly ground dates, then poured over stewed meats, roasted vegetables, and yes, more dormice. The room reacts the way any place would when suddenly submerged in the aromatic equivalent of a fish market deep fried in molasses. A few guests subtly cough. One tilts his head back as if to mentally escape. You do your best to breathe shallowly. The slaves enter, placing bowls down with practiced precision. One in front of you contains what appears to be an eel, curled like a bracelet in thick sauce. It smells like the sea had a tantrum, and yet there's something addictive in it too. The umami note cuts through the sweetness. It's chaos, but organized. Historians still argue whether garum was every Roman's favorite flavor, or just something they tolerated because it kept well and added punch to bland food. It was expensive, imported, and available in different grades. Tonight, Gaius is showing off with the strong stuff, and there's no escaping it. The heat from the dishes sends tendrils of steam into the air. You watch as a fine mist settles on nearby surfaces. You're fairly certain your tunic now smells like fermented mackerel. Permanently. One guest dips a fig into the sauce and pops it into his mouth. He nods with theatrical pleasure, eyes half closed. Another guest raises a brow and does the same, but gags a little mid-bite. To each their own, apparently. A young boy, barefoot and dressed in a stained linen tunic, passes by with a small basket of rose petals. He tosses them across the floor as he walks, a half-hearted attempt at olfactory damage control. The petals land like wilting soldiers on a battlefield of garum steam. You shift slightly on the couch. The smell has now sunk into the cushions, mingling with the ever-present scent of goat hair and mildew. A fly buzzes lazily past your face, then hovers indecisively over a discarded fig. The dog snorts in its sleep. A curious side dish is placed in front of you. Chickpeas fried in olive oil and tossed with asafoetida, a spice known today as devil's dung. That's not a joke. The Romans imported it as a garlic substitute, but the smell is somewhere between sulfur, leeks, and regret. You try a bite. It's spicy, earthy, and it haunts your sinuses for the next several minutes. Someone nearby loudly declares, "The stronger the smell, the closer to the gods." Whether that's a theological insight or just coping, you can't be sure. Either way, a few guests murmur in agreement, clutching their cups like shields. Then comes the pork, slow roasted, stuffed with herbs and pine nuts, and basted in, surprise, more garum. It smells rich, gamey, and smoky, like the hearth itself decided to roast a boar and throw in every spice in the pantry. There's also a vague cinnamon edge to it, which somehow makes it worse. Fun fact, Roman chefs were known to blend sweet and savory in ways that still confuse modern palates. Honeyed meat, candied radish, fish sauce, and fruit. Gaius has clearly paid for the full culinary experience, and your nose is first in line. The scent cloud in the room is now so thick you could cut it with a strigil. Every inhale delivers something new. Charcoal, rosemary, vinegar, garlic, cinnamon, and that deeply unshakable eel. You start to lose the ability to track which smell belongs to what dish. It becomes more like scent jazz, discordant, experimental, and only appreciated by those too polite to say otherwise. A slave bumps a brazier, and a piece of charcoal tumbles out, releasing a plume of smoke that smells like roasted rosemary stems. It momentarily distracts from the fish sauce haze, and a few guests sigh in relief. Across the room, a debate erupts about whether adding saffron to garum ruins its purity. One man insists it elevates it to divine. Another says it makes it taste like scented seawater. You agree with the latter, though you keep it to yourself. The host, meanwhile, is basking in the chaos, clearly delighted. He waves his hand through the air like a maestro, conducting a very aromatic orchestra. His tunic smells like rose, smoke, and confidence. You have questions about all three. The poetry resumes, now with a musical accompaniment. A small harp, plucked delicately by a nervous-looking boy whose fingers probably smell like every platter he helped carry. The music floats gently, but can't quite cut through the savory fog. The food, you realize, is slowing. Plates are still being passed, but guests are leaning back, loosening their belts, or rather, adjusting their togas with practiced nonchalance. The dog shifts and lets out a deep, meaty burp. You sympathize. You're full. Not just in your stomach, but in your senses. Your clothes smell like feast. Your hair smells like firewood and anchovies. You are officially part of the Roman dinner party now, saturated, slow, and smoldering with scent. The food slows, but the digestion noises begin. Groans, sighs, burps, some stifled, some not. You hear a few half-hearted philosophical musings begin to swirl. discussions of fate, freedom, the price of olive oil, and whether the soul has weight. But even those deep thoughts are no match for the increasingly ambient rumble of full bellies and protesting guts. And then, it happens. A guest, you'll call him Marcus, because every feast has a Marcus, lets one slip. Loud enough to be heard, soft enough to pretend it wasn't intentional. The room pauses. A moment of tension, then a round of laughter. Someone claps him on the back. Crisis averted. Flatulence, it turns out, was far less taboo in the Roman world than it is in ours. According to some ancient writers, even the Emperor Claudius once proposed a law encouraging people to pass wind freely, especially at banquets. Health reasons, they said. Hygiene of the gut. You suspect it was more about saving face during cheese-heavy meals like this one. The scent that follows Marcus's moment of infamy is not subtle. It's sharp, ripe, and layered with something that might be onion or tragedy. Someone discreetly waves a sprig of mint in the air like it might double as a magic wand. A slave, possibly experienced in these matters, appears with a small bowl of hot coals and throws crushed bay leaves onto it. Instantly, a cloud of fragrant smoke rises, sweet and spicy, filling the air with something much closer to comfort. You breathe in deeply and almost forgive Marcus. A new voice begins speaking from across the table. He's quoting Seneca about simplicity, frugality, the virtues of moderation. He does this while picking meat from between his teeth with a golden pin. The irony drips like the honey glaze on his now empty plate. You glance around. Half the guests are reclined, faces flushed, eyes heavy-lidded. A few are still eating, one even peeling a boiled egg with the delicate grace of a jeweler. The egg's smell is immediate, sulfuric. You look away. Then someone knocks over a lamp. The little bronze oil burner tips off a side table and hits the floor with a clang. No fire, thankfully, but the scent of spilled sesame oil immediately floods the area. Rich, slightly nutty, and deeply embedded with lamp soot. The slaves clean it up quickly, replacing the lamp and pouring fresh oil. But the air holds the echo of it. Historians still argue whether these moments were seen as clumsy accidents or part of the feast's charm. In letters and plays, writers describe such feasts as chaotic and joyful, where minor disasters were part of the show. You believe it. The mix of reverence and absurdity in this room is hard to replicate. Someone begins a toast. He stands, or rather wobbles, and raises his cup high. He's attempting to quote Virgil. It comes out mangled. But the point is made. Long live Rome, long live the feast, and may the gods forgive tomorrow's hangovers. A chorus of raised cups follows. The clinking sound rings out, beautiful in its unevenness. It's accompanied by another belch. You're starting to wonder if Roman banquets were, in fact, proto-stand-up comedy hours where food and bodily noise formed a kind of duet. One of the women across the room sprays perfume into the air from a tiny carved flask. You catch the mist, violet and saffron, bright and oddly musky. It lingers in your nostrils like a question you forgot to ask. And now, as the heat in the room climbs slightly from the lamps and brazier, you feel sweat bead at your temples. The smell of people, wine-warmed, food-heavy people, is undeniable. Humans steeped in their own sauce. It's not offensive, but it's not subtle. Salt, oil, musk, and rose. The harp player continues his soft plucking. The strings buzz under his fingers, a soothing hum under the riot of dinner. Someone has started snoring on the far couch. No one wakes him. You admire that. The scent of cinnamon returns. Someone must be warming sticks of it on the brazier again. The smell blends with the air's richness, making everything feel slow, sticky, and a bit surreal. The dog rolls over and sighs deeply, adding its own quiet aroma to the collective. You don't even flinch anymore. Somewhere nearby, someone drops a fig into their cup of wine. It splashes, releasing a new scent. Fermented sweetness, like molasses and blackberries. You consider doing the same, but your cup is empty. A slave notices and refills it without a word. You nod in thanks. And then comes the final philosophical question of the night, from a flushed-cheeked man with a mouth stained purple from wine. If a man is full but still eats, is he greedy or just Roman? Laughter. Agreement. No one stops eating. The lamps flicker lower as more oil is burned away, and the feast begins to slow, not from lack of food, but from the sheer physical inability of the diners to continue. You are no longer eating. You are enduring. Reclining here feels less like leisure and more like recovery. And yet, the scentscape evolves again. Now that the platters have been mostly cleared, the air becomes less aggressively savory. The garum mist settles, the vinegar tones retreat, and in their place rise softer, smokier scents. A new brazier is lit near the center of the room, and into it someone tosses what looks like cinnamon bark, a few cloves, and strips of citrus peel. The aroma is gentle, warming. It's like the room is exhaling with you. But not everyone is settling into tranquility. A spirited debate erupts between two men near the host's couch. The topic? Whether stoicism is compatible with civic duty. You'd be more interested if one of them didn't smell like raw leeks. Every time he gestures for emphasis, a wave of eye-watering onion air spills across the couch line like a rhetorical battering ram. Still, the guests lean in, nodding, offering counterpoints, all while chewing roasted chestnuts or sipping their third or fifth cup of wine. One woman taps her cup to emphasize her argument about fate, causing her jewelry to clink against the bronze. Her perfume is sandalwood heavy, warm and heady, and mercifully dominant in the air near her. Just then, another round of food arrives, but this isn't the sugary secunda mensa yet. This is the oddities course: flamingo tongues, kidneys stuffed with pine nuts, peahen eggs dyed with saffron and vinegar. The flamingo tongues are the most visually unsettling, small, curled, pink, and glistening in a glaze of honey and mustard. The smell is gamey, slightly metallic, and vaguely medicinal. You're not sure whether to eat one or apologize to it. Historians still debate whether delicacies like these were truly enjoyed or simply tolerated for the sake of status. Eating something rare, even if it smelled like damp feathers, meant power. The more impossible the dish, the more impressive the host. And Gaius is clearly trying to impress someone. As the dishes are set down, the dog makes another pass through the couch legs. He sniffs the floor, pauses at the flamingo tongue plate, and wisely moves on. His nose twitches at the scent of saffron, pungent and slightly sweet, like floral hay, and he licks at a drop spilled near a sandal. To your right, someone lights a small clay lamp filled with beeswax and thyme. It burns cleanly, releasing a scent that cuts through the fatty haze in the air. Beeswax has a lovely, almost comforting smell, like warm bread and candle smoke. You try to lean closer without appearing rude. Then there's the sound of gagging. A guest across the room has attempted a bite of the saffron egg. It apparently did not agree. He retches politely into a napkin and excuses himself. The smell that trails after him is not pleasant. A slave rushes to mop the floor behind him, tossing down crushed myrtle leaves and rose petals to mask the mess. You've now reached that moment in the Roman banquet where the food becomes less about taste and more about spectacle. Entertainers begin to arrive. Jugglers, a flute girl, a man with a trained monkey. The monkey smells like monkey. There's no polite way to describe it. It's the scent of unwashed fur, dates, and mild rebellion. The flute music is high and reedy, almost hypnotic. Combined with the fading lamplight and the slowly sweetening air, it creates a strange, dreamlike atmosphere, like you're floating in a warm, fragrant fog full of confusion, cinnamon, and euphoria. Someone nearby dips his fingers into a dish of date syrup and absent-mindedly sucks them clean while quoting from Ovid. His breath smells like fermented sugar and literary smugness. You glance at the host, Gaius, who looks immensely pleased. His tunic is stained at the hem with wine, and his hair has begun to wilt under the lamp heat. He reeks of triumph and rose oil. The scent from the brazier deepens now. Cloves, cinnamon, and orange rinds roasting slowly, releasing a spicy sweet perfume into the heavy air. For the first time tonight, there's consensus around the table. Everyone breathes in. "Ah," says one guest. "Now that smells like civilization." You nod, silently agreeing. Even if you suspect your pillow tonight will reek of eel and cumin. The laughter, wine, and firelight blur together. Someone drops a cup. No one moves to pick it up. You glance at your hands. They smell like herbs, oil, and just a faint trace of roasted bird. And somewhere deep in your mind, a small part of you wonders what the dessert will smell like. The triclinium is no longer a banquet hall. It's a fever dream, and you are reclining at the center of it. Somewhere between intoxication and digestion, time has started to melt. Conversations overlap like competing smells. There's an air of anticipation, and in that suspenseful lull, the desserts begin to arrive. Secunda mensa, the sweet course, is here. At first, it's subtle. A whisper of cinnamon in the air, a curl of steam rising from a tray of honey fritters. These are globuli, little fried dough balls soaked in honey and dusted with poppy seeds. They smell like deep-fried warmth, sugar, and comfort. Your senses, battered by vinegar and eel, perk up. A slave places a plate near you, and you lean in. The aroma is divine, crackling crust, floral honey, and something floral beneath it. Rosewater, you realize. Romans love to add floral scents to their desserts. Not always taste, just the scent. It made the food feel more luxurious. The flavor could be bland, but the smell was everything. Historians still argue whether Roman desserts were genuinely sweet by our standards, or more perfumed than sugary. Honey was the main sweetener, of course, but it was expensive and often rationed. Gaius, predictably, has spared no expense. More dishes arrive. Baked figs, split and stuffed with crushed nuts, then drizzled with fermented fish sauce mixed with honey. Yes, they just couldn't resist one last hurrah for garum. Even here, in dessert. You take a cautious sniff. It smells complicated. Sweet at first, then salty, then strangely earthy. You taste and it's not unpleasant, but your nose struggles to trust what's happening. Nearby, someone is spooning a soft custard from a decorative bowl. It's thick, yellowed with egg yolks, and perfumed with bay leaf. Yes, perfumed. Bay leaf doesn't taste like much, but its aroma, warm and woody, fills the air around the custard. It feels like eating a forest floor in springtime. You make a note to try it again. Never. And then someone breaks out the dates. Sticky, rich, and sun-ripened, these dates were likely imported from Egypt or Mesopotamia. The smell is deep and dark, like brown sugar and molasses left on a windowsill in July. A guest mashes one with almonds and hands it to his neighbor, who accepts it like a holy relic. You accept one too, and for a brief moment you are at peace. The date is soft, the almond crunchy, and the air around you smells of roasted nuts and fig skins. Even the dog seems soothed. Then comes the surprise course, always one at Gaius's dinners. A dish covered by a silver dome is unveiled with a flourish. Inside, a jelly made from boiled pig's feet and flavored with honey, vinegar, and crushed violets. Yes, violet-flavored pork jelly. The scent is like sugar and skin. One guest applauds, another excuses himself to the latrine, and just like that, the mood pivots again. The latrine is located off the peristyle garden, and the guest returns a few minutes later, looking both relieved and slightly scented. Roman toilets, after all, were communal, lit by candlelight, often located near the kitchens. The smell that trails back in with him? A combination of burning tallow, mildew, and fig leaves. It adds a certain reality check to the dessert round. Another slave passes by with a silver tray of candied nuts, almonds roasted in sesame and coated in a thin glaze of honey. The smell is caramelizing, warm and floral. You reach for one and nearly knock over your wine cup. A nearby guest steadies it for you with a wink. "I once drank 6 of those," he mutters, "and woke up married." You laugh, though you're not sure if he's joking. Someone adds cloves to the brazier again, and the resulting puff of smoke swirls above the table. It dances through the cinnamon, the honey, the floral air, creating a scent that is dreamy, heavy, and a little intoxicating. The harp player switches to a slower melody, and conversation dips to a murmur. This is the moment when people start to drift into sleep, into whispered gossip, into post-meal stupor. You find your gaze fixed on a flickering lamp, its light reflected in the glaze on your half-eaten fig. Another guest mumbles something about Caesar's taste in perfumes. Someone else starts debating whether almonds aid digestion or cause melancholy. You're not sure you care. The room smells now like a blend of every course you've tasted: roasted, fried, honeyed, pickled, perfumed. It's overwhelming, yes, but oddly comforting, like falling asleep inside a bakery that shares walls with a spice market and a stable. And then, as a final touch, a perfume boy walks through the room once more. He's young, barefoot, and silent, carrying a shallow bowl filled with perfumed oil, violet, saffron, and musk. He dips his fingers and flicks droplets into the air, one by one. They land on faces, sleeves, table edges. The scent rises delicately above everything else. It smells like sleep, or the idea of it. You close your eyes briefly, just to rest them. The couch is softer now, the cushion warmer, or maybe you've just surrendered. You are, for better or worse, exactly where you're supposed to be. You stir slightly, not from movement, but from smell. A new scent drifts through the room, thick, woody, and unmistakably burnt. Someone has knocked a pine resin stick into the brazier, whether by accident or design, and now the room is swimming in its ghostly smoke. You feel it coat your throat, your eyes, the inside of your nose. It's not unpleasant, but it is insistent. This is how the Romans kept the room fresh, by layering scent on scent until nothing could be clearly identified anymore. It's not about eliminating odors, it's about smothering them with stronger, more civilized ones. And nothing says civilized like a haze of resin curling through a half-drunken audience of cheese-stuffed philosophers. The poetry resumes. A guest with too much wine and not enough shame begins reciting in slow, slurred Latin. Something about the moon's reflection in the Tiber. It might be beautiful if you could hear it clearly, but the rhythm keeps faltering, and every time he breathes in, it smells like spiced pear and digestive surrender. You nod politely. The poem ends. Another begins. No one claps. A dog sneezes. As the poetry fades, the servants begin their second sweep of the floor, not with brooms yet, but with little scoops and trays. A kind of quiet scuttling begins beneath the couches as food scraps, fallen nuts, and sticky fritters are gently gathered. One servant uses a powder to sprinkle over a damp patch of spilled wine. The smell of crushed pine needles rises, astringent, sharp, almost cleansing. Historians aren't sure exactly what these powders were made from. Some think dried herbs. Others suspect ground chalk or ash mixed with scent. Whatever it was, it masked the smell of wet feet, fermented juice, and time. You shift again, the cushion beneath you now sticky in spots. You try not to think about it. A slave offers you a second cloth, this one slightly damp, infused with rosewater. You use it to wipe your hands, but the scent of previous courses clings. Your fingertips still carry whispers of eel, vinegar, cinnamon, and what can only be described as fig funk. More wine is offered. You refuse gently, and it feels like the first real decision you've made in hours. Then comes a strange moment. Quiet, unexpected, rare. The host stands, not fully, just upright enough to gesture toward the ceiling and mutter something about Saturn, fortune, and the fleeting nature of pleasure. Everyone nods solemnly. Even the drunkest among you seems to absorb the mood. And in that pause, a new smell enters, the cool night air. The doors to the peristyle garden are open just slightly, and a breeze wafts in. It smells of damp stone, crushed lavender, and something green. Maybe ivy, maybe olive branches, maybe freedom. For the first time all evening, the scent doesn't come from something added or burned. It's just there. It breaks the spell of the feast like a soft bell in a crowded room. Some guests sit up. One even stretches. The harp player falters slightly in his playing, blinking at the intrusion of fresh air. A few guests shift their couches nearer the garden doors, greedy for a breath of outside. And yet, as you lean in to enjoy it too, another scent crashes back. The room's warm interior. Roasted meats, sweet oils, human heat, old cushions, and all the perfumes of empire. The two air masses collide like weather fronts, and you're caught in the turbulence. Someone, trying to revive the festive mood, claps twice. The musicians resume. Another guest demands one more poem. The perfume boy passes again, flicking saffron oil this time. The breeze closes. The air thickens. At the far edge of the room, you notice a slave with a fan, not for cooling, but to keep the scent circulating. His task is to wave the air so it moves evenly, so no one section becomes dead, as they say. The fan smells faintly of beeswax and olive smoke. He's been doing this for hours. You lie back, heavy now not just with food, but with the weight of every breath you've taken tonight. This isn't just dinner. It's an olfactory performance, a gauntlet, a test of stomach and scent. You glance again at your tunic, rumpled, stained, and surely perfumed with enough history to warrant preservation. You feel like you've aged 10 years and gained knowledge you'll never be able to explain. Knowledge in the form of smells, sensory secrets, and somewhere beyond the brazier, beyond the garum, beyond the harp and the humming voices, you think you might have caught the faintest scent of yourself. Somewhere in all this, you're still in there. You sigh deeply, the air leaving your lungs scented like every course served tonight. You don't remember when you last felt truly clean, or dry, or unscented. The feast continues, not so much out of hunger now, but because ending it would mean facing reality, stepping back into a cooler, darker world where you no longer recline like a deity. The triclinium is a temple, the couch is your altar, and the smell, the holy smoke of gluttony and survival. Someone stifles a hiccup, another lets theirs echo freely. Somewhere nearby, a guest drips honey onto his sleeve and simply shrugs. You begin to suspect that post-dinner stickiness is just part of Roman culture. Then comes the floor powder again, this time sprinkled with ground iris root and violet petals. It floats lazily in the air, its floral fragrance barely disguising the sour note beneath it. Old wine, sweat, and overripe fruit. You find yourself grateful. It could be worse. A servant appears beside you and offers a small bronze spoon. No explanation. You look down and realize he's pointing toward a communal bowl of custard, dense, lemony, and lightly smoked from being baked in the hearth. The scent is familiar now. Ash, sweet milk, and citrus zest. You take a spoonful. It clings to your tongue like warm perfume. Historians debate whether this kind of dish was served at every feast, or just the extravagant ones. Based on Gaius's giddy expression and the gold flakes on top of the custard, this is clearly the latter. A guest opposite you has begun humming, a slow, tuneless melody that loops and folds in on itself. No one stops him. The hum becomes part of the room, part of the rhythm, like another layer of scent you can't quite describe. It feels almost soporific. Then another knock, this time, not a dropped lamp, but a dish fallen from a low table. It shatters quietly, releasing the sharp tang of vinegar and lemon. No drama, no gasps. Just a slave kneeling, sweeping, pouring mint powder to cover the splash. The aroma rises quickly, bright and medicinal. You inhale it deeply, letting it clear your palate, your mind. Across the room, a guest raises his arms, yawns dramatically, and fans his face. The movement stirs the air around you. Warm body heat, clove oil, and that now unmistakable garum residue. You flinch, just a little. The dog gets up again. He stretches, back legs extended, tail wagging faintly. Then he sniffs a plate, sneezes once, and circles back to his spot. His whole fur now smells like fish, fritters, and dignity lost. Gaius calls for something amusing, and a boy with a trained bird is ushered in. The bird, a small green parrot, is perched on a stick and says something rude in Greek. Laughter erupts. The bird says it again. You can smell its droppings before you see them, and even the dog looks unimpressed. The bird is replaced by a mime. He juggles figs. One drops. A guest eats it. No one blinks. You notice someone tracing patterns in spilled honey on the tabletop. It's mesmerizing. The stickiness of the feast has become art. Finger painting with syrup. You'd join if your fingers didn't already feel like miniature bees. Another guest whispers to you. The best part comes after the singing. You're not sure what that means, but the harpist is tuning again, and someone is beginning to hum in harmony. The scent in the air now is mostly sweet, baked goods, burnt sugar, floral oil. But beneath that, still lingering, is the echo of pork fat, vinegar, and sweat-soaked linen. It's a scent you'll never forget. Not because it's pleasant, but because it has now imprinted itself in your memory like a branding iron. Quirky Roman belief. They thought strong smells could protect against evil spirits. By that logic, you're now coated in an entire exorcism's worth of protection. Someone drops a bundle of dried sage into the brazier, and a rush of sharp herbal smoke floods the room. It sends one guest into a coughing fit. Another leans in and declares, "That's the smell of health." You politely nod as your throat tightens. As the smoke curls up toward the ceiling, mixing with lamp soot and perfume mist, you suddenly feel outside of time. You could be in 10 CE or 110 CE, and it would smell the same. This dinner could be the night before an empire falls, or just another Tuesday. And still, the smells layer. Oil, fig, garum, laughter, perfume, exhaustion. You are in it. Of it. You are the smell now. You don't so much sit on the couch anymore as melt into it. The cushion cradles you like it's made of tired bread dough, sour, warm, and vaguely sticky. You've passed beyond fullness and into a new dimension of sensation, where even your skin smells like someone else's meal. The lamps burn low, their light dimming into amber pools on the mosaic floor. They sputter occasionally, releasing puffs of smoke that smell like sesame oil and scorched wick. The shadows they cast stretch long across the reclining guests, most of whom are now somewhere between deep thought and light snoring. A quiet moment arrives. Someone mutters, "We live as long as we eat," and no one argues. Probably because it's either very profound or completely meaningless, and no one's in shape to debate it. You don't so much sit on the couch anymore as melt into it. The cushion cradles you like it's made of tired bread dough, sour, warm, and vaguely sticky. You've passed beyond fullness and into a new dimension of sensation, where even your skin smells like someone else's meal. The lamps burn low, their light dimming into amber pools on the mosaic floor. They sputter occasionally, releasing puffs of smoke that smell like sesame oil and scorched wick. The shadows they cast stretch long across the reclining guests, most of whom are now somewhere between deep thought and light snoring. A quiet moment arrives. Someone mutters, "We live as long as we eat," and no one argues. Probably because it's either very profound or completely meaningless, and no one's in shape to debate it. The slaves have brought in bowls of pine resin and orange rinds and set them near the entryway. The citrus sharpness cuts through the garum fog like a small, glowing knife. For a fleeting moment, you can almost imagine you're outside, somewhere fresh, breezy, clean. But then someone nearby drops a spoonful of sweet goat cheese onto the floor, and the illusion breaks with a squelch. Another guest dips his fingers into a shallow bowl of spiced oil and flicks it at a friend like a child with a water balloon. The oil hits the man's tunic, who laughs and retaliates with a sticky fig. You watch this unfolding with the hazy detachment of someone observing life from the bottom of a tepid bath. Historians still question whether Roman dinners were really this long, or if the ancient writers exaggerated. But judging by the way no one moves with any urgency, and the fact that the dog has fallen asleep twice, you suspect they were absolutely this long, and possibly longer. The air now has the density of stew. Every breath is warm, wet, and perfumed with decay and sweetness. You're breathing history, literally. A servant quietly enters and sprinkles rose water along the base of the walls, then over the clay tiles. The scent is light, delicate, almost a ghost. It dances just above the wine spills and crumbled fig bits like a silk veil over a battlefield. You shift again and notice your own arm now smells like cinnamon, goat hair, and faint charcoal. You're becoming one with the couch. You wonder if anyone's ever fallen asleep here and simply been mistaken for furniture. Suddenly, laughter bursts from one corner, some joke about Achilles and lentils. It starts a ripple of chuckles across the room, but dies quickly, the way late-night laughter often does. You smile out of politeness, but your head is already drifting elsewhere. The harpist plays slower now, almost uncertainly, as if the strings themselves are sleepy. The room is a hum of satisfied murmurs and the occasional soft clink of a bowl being collected. Dishes are stacked and whisked away, their former contents smeared across plates in honey and ash. And then the perfume boys return. They carry bowls of hot coals and scented oil, musk, saffron, violet again. This time they gently wave fans to spread the fragrance. It wafts over the guests like a sleeping spell. The smoke curls into your nose and pulls gently on your eyelids. It's the olfactory equivalent of a lullaby. One guest near the edge of the room mumbles a goodbye to no one in particular and is helped upright. He wobbles like a ship mast in a storm, and as he turns, you catch one final puff of his scent: wine, sweat, baked fig, and crushed dreams. The garden doors creak open again. This time, no wind comes through. Just a reminder that outside still exists. The scent of night air is barely noticeable now, overpowered by cloves, smoke, and satisfaction. And that's when it hits you. A smell so faint, so strange, you're not even sure it's real. Is that lavender? Yes. Distant, dry, and clean. Someone must have brushed past a sachet or spilled oil. It rises above the rest, a final offering. You exhale slowly. The taste of the room is on your breath. You are part of it now. You are soaked in story, sweat, and saffron. And beneath all that, a small part of you, the part that remembers the first scent of olive wood outside the door, feels content. The harpist plays slower now, almost uncertainly, as if the strings themselves are sleepy. The room is a hum of satisfied murmurs and the occasional soft clink of a bowl being collected. Dishes are stacked and whisked away, their former contents smeared across plates in honey and ash. And then the perfume boys return. They carry bowls of hot coals and scented oil, musk, saffron, violet again. This time they gently wave fans to spread the fragrance. It wafts over the guests like a sleeping spell. The smoke curls into your nose and pulls gently on your eyelids. It's the olfactory equivalent of a lullaby. One guest near the edge of the room mumbles a goodbye to no one in particular and is helped upright. He wobbles like a ship mast in a storm, and as he turns you catch one final puff of his scent: wine, sweat, baked fig, and crushed dreams. The garden doors creak open again. This time no wind comes through. Just a reminder that outside still exists. The scent of night air is barely noticeable now, overpowered by cloves, smoke, and satisfaction. And that's when it hits you. A smell so faint, so strange, you're not even sure it's real. Is that lavender? Yes. Distant, dry, and clean. Someone must have brushed past a sachet or spilled oil. It rises above the rest, a final offering. You exhale slowly. The taste of the room is on your breath. You are part of it now. You are soaked in story, sweat, and saffron. And beneath all that, a small part of you, the part that remembers the first scent of olive wood outside the door, feels content. The air no longer moves. It hangs, still and dense, like a woven tapestry soaked in scent. Even the lamps seem reluctant to flicker, their flames exhausted, leaning toward the end of their oil supply like tired tongues. You recline deeper into your spot, no longer bothering to adjust. The cushion has accepted you as its own. Somewhere nearby, a final course is served. A dessert wine, thick and syrupy, perfumed with myrrh and boiled grape must. It smells like warm plums left on a sun-baked windowsill, sticky and floral. You sip it without lifting your head, just tilting the cup toward your lips. It tastes like a goodbye. One of the older guests begins to hum again. The tune is slower this time, softer, barely above a whisper. Others follow, murmuring along without words. It's like a lullaby for the bloated and the brave. The harp falls silent. The boy who plays it has nodded off, slumped forward, the strings pressed against his cheek. No one wakes him. It seems fitting. The slaves, still alert, move carefully, barefoot, their scent faint. Soapwort, sweat, and discipline. They gather plates, adjust lamps, fan the perfume oil gently across the room in a final act of hospitality. Each movement carries a scent, and each scent carries a story. You're no longer noticing individual odors. You're noticing their absence. The vinegar has faded. The roasted meats have cooled. Even the garum, once omnipresent, now clings only to the deepest corners of the room. In their place, sweetness, warmth, and a lingering trace of smoke. Historians still debate whether Roman feasts ever truly ended, or if they simply dissolved into sleep. No grand send-off, no formal goodbye, just a gradual slouch into dreams. Judging by the snoring from the next couch over, you lean toward the latter. A breeze stirs again. Not strong, just enough to lift the edge of your tunic and remind your skin what fresh air feels like. It carries with it the smell of lavender, crushed underfoot in the garden. You hold that smell like a talisman, folding it between the cinnamon, rose water, and fig. The last guest to speak does so softly, a comment about the stars, perhaps. You don't catch all of it, but the sound of his voice blends with the harp's last echo. The feast is over, and yet the scents remain. The couch smells like you now, and you smell like it. Roasted meat, cheap wine, pine ash, and some impossible blend of saffron and sleep. Your hair carries the firewood, your hands the honey, your very breath, the layered perfume of 100 stories. No one moves anymore. The room is quiet, except for the whisper of coals settling and the steady exhale of tired lungs. You close your eyes, and the last thing you notice is how everything smells like the end of something beautiful. The lamps burn low now, casting long golden shadows across the mosaic tiles. The laughter has faded into a hush, and even the scents, once vivid and commanding, have softened into gentle reminders of what came before. The warmth of roasted spices still lingers faintly in the air, curling around you like a comfortable blanket. Outside, a breeze rustles the fig leaves in the garden. You imagine the scent of those leaves in the cool air, earthy, green, familiar. A contrast to the warm chaos behind you. The breeze is slow, rhythmic, like a sleeping breath. You feel your own lungs fall into pace with it. The couch beneath you cradles your body like it's been waiting for this moment. You felt so many things tonight: cinnamon, garum, honey, sweat, laughter. But now it's time to let them all drift away. Let the smells fade into memory, like footprints in soft sand. Your limbs are heavy. The room is soft. The harp has gone quiet. Even the dog snores gently, curled in its own private corner of rest. No one speaks now. No one needs to. You're full, body, mind, and senses. So go ahead. Breathe in one last time. Exhale slowly. Let the warmth of candle smoke and rose water drift behind your eyes. And sleep. Sleep as the Romans did, full of stories, honey, and dreams wrapped in the scent of twilight.